5 Parts of Michael Afton by Marcus Junius Brutus. Chapter 2. The Party. Evan hid his Foxy plush in his closet, his new one. I accidentally ripped the head off his old one a few months ago, but Dad brought him a new one by the end of the day. The headless one sat in Evan's plushy pile, but the other waited in the dark of his closet. I would have waited for him more too, but I had other plans. For the next few days, Dad insisted we get out of the house more, which meant him hauling us to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza at unnatural hours. We both yawned and bumped down the 2-mile forest road that led to a bright and cheerful suburb. From here, it was another half-mile to Freddy's. Dad parked his purple Lincoln next to Uncle Henry's black Buick. This early, we were the only ones there. We'd have to wait an hour before the staff trickled in, and an hour after that before the pizzeria opened. The staff were always nice to us, maybe because we were the owner's kids, or maybe because they wouldn't work at a family restaurant if they didn't like kids to begin with. I wouldn't have minded hanging out with them or playing games or anything at Freddy's if Evan weren't around. He started trembling the second he set foot through the door and stuck to me like my shadow, playing whatever I'd let him do with me. I sighed, but humored him, since some of the games were two-person ones. When the staff started to arrive, they made a fuss over him and asked him why he was upset and brought him whatever food or toys they thought would calm him down. They tried to coax him into low-key areas like the ball pit, but he only shuffled closer to me. I bristled each time someone told me what a good big brother I was for looking out for him, like I had a choice. I killed some time doodling on blank my fun day papers. My favorite was of the time I switched the music tracks so the animatronics would play Rio, Speedwagon. I brought the drawing to Uncle Henry. He chuckled and said he couldn't hang that one in the restaurant, but he put it up in his office with some of Charlie's drawings. We left him, and I ditched Evan as soon as my friends showed up. The first day, when he tagged after me and my friends, we played a few rounds of games, then shut out of the restaurant as soon as Evan started playing pinball. It was humid in June in Hurricane, Utah, and our sweaty clothes clung to us as we ran. Uncle Henry caught up to us in his car, with Evan curled up in the back seat. I shuffled to a stop and groaned. Henry rolled down the window and said, "I called your mother. She said she can watch Evan for the rest of the day." "Really?" I asked, brightening. "That's great. Michael." He paused what he was about to say, stretching out the time by fidgeting with his glasses and running a hand through his long, messy hair. The muscles in his jaw worked as his eyes shifted towards my friends. Whatever he wanted to say to me, it wouldn't be in front of them. For now, he settled on, "Please, be careful." "Sure." I gave a quick wave as he drove off, and Orson asked, "Who's that?" He had the deepest voice of all us 13-year-olds, and it sounded almost like a growl. Behind him stood Jay, dark-skinned and fit, and Peter, pale and hulking. I didn't know how they'd feel about the nerdy engineer. He was part of Freddy's, though, and Freddy's was cool. "That's Uncle Henry," I said as confidently as I could. "He's not really my uncle. He and Dad own Freddy's together." "Ah, cool." Orson nodded. I relaxed my tense shoulders, though I wasn't sure what I would have done if they made fun of him. I didn't want to risk being labeled a nerd myself. They already thought I was smart because I had a British accent. I did well in school, and sometimes accidentally used big words I absorbed from the geniuses of my life. Emboldened now, I said, "Dad's the creative one, and does more character design, and Henry makes most of the robot parts. He's usually in the back or in the Fredbear suit. Dad's the yellow rabbit." "Do you ever help with anything?" Jay asked. "Freddy's is all about family, right?" That was true. Mom used to write some songs for the animatronics, and a lot of the recipes supposedly came from Uncle Henry's ex-wife. I'd never met her. "I mostly test games and stuff," I told them. "They're only just starting to teach me about the robots. There's this one old Foxy that I keep taking apart and putting back together." I didn't say how unsuccessful the second half of that process usually was, and how it usually ended up mangled and fritzy. Actually, Foxy was kind of my idea, by which I meant that years ago, when Dad and Uncle Henry debated some design choices for their new Fox, I screamed, "Make him a pirate." I then held their blueprints hostage and drew eye patches and hook hands all over them in crayon until the two men gave in and agreed that I could speak for their core demographic. That was a long time ago. I didn't talk about Freddy's for the rest of the day, any more than I could help. I was just as reluctant the next couple of days, too. On one of those days, we ran out on Evan again. I hid at home under his bed with my mask and popped out when he came in. On the final day before the party, Evan stuck with us too close to ditch, so we dragged him into parts and services. This was packed full of animatronic parts, the outer costumes and the inner frameworks that Dad called endoskeletons. I locked the door with a satisfying click. I'd never tell Evan, but I hated that room too. It was something about the way those endoskeletons looked almost human, but weren't quite. There was no fur or plastic to hide the metal and wire robot innards. It creeped me out. It didn't take Uncle Henry long to find Evan, but the kid was in tears by then. Dad yelled at me and shook me by a bunched up handful of my shirt. "If you keep this up, you can't come to..." He trailed off as I smirked. We both knew that however much he wanted to punish me, he wouldn't ban me from the party. Evan needed guests to make him feel special. Dad dropped me, and I scurried away. I spent the rest of the day in Elizabeth's room, tinkering with my toy Foxy. I was the only one who went in there, so I sat in the pink flowery room and ripped the fox apart in peace. It felt good. I dozed off in there and woke up on June 26th surrounded by metal scraps and bolts and wires and tools. Evan was there too. I jumped when I saw him. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, wishing I didn't sound so groggy. "It's my birthday," he said and waited. "Happy birthday," I replied dryly. He started to shrink back, but then he shook his head and tried again. His words were louder, but still carried a tremor. "I want you to knock it off today. I want you to knock it off for good, but at least for my birthday. It's going to be bad enough. I'll stop when you stop." "What?" "Admit you're lying about Liz. Say you're sorry, and I'll let you off the hook." "But..." Evan cocked his head, like he was considering it, but sighed and said, "No, I'm not lying. And if you try anything, I'll tell Mom." Lizzie's death was hard enough for her. Do you want to upset her more? It was a low blow, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and Dad's too busy to care. You have to deal with your own problems by yourself. Evan balled his hands into fists and stomped out of the room, lip quivering. He drove with Dad to Freddy Fazbear's, and I went later with Mom. She smiled and hummed and chatted, and I tried to smile back. Her cheeks had a hint of pink that morning, and she sat straighter than usual. Was this progress? Mom and I parted at the restaurant when she went to sit with the other parents, and I charged the ball pit where my friends were waiting. We spent some time dragging the little kids down by their ankles. They shrieked at first, but the shrieks turned to giggles. They were having a blast, even though the guest of honor sulked by himself. I kept glancing in his direction, feeling sick again. Orson nudged me and asked, "Want to go make his day?" His eyes twinkled mischievously. Truthfully, I wanted to avoid Evan, but I forced a smile and said, "Sure." "We could lock him back with the robot skeletons," Pete suggested after spinning out a blue plastic ball that had lodged itself in his mouth. "I don't know." "I thought you said he hates the robots." They all looked disappointed, so I said, "Yeah, but we did that yesterday. It's his birthday. We should be creative." Creativity was always a strong suit of mine, so it didn't take me long to snap my fingers and say, "I've got it. Put up some character masks and meet me back here." The trio rushed the prize counter with some tickets they saved up. I already had my Foxy mask with me, so I heaved myself out of the ball pit and donned it slowly, almost ceremonially. I waited by a girl from the neighborhood who had green eyes and red pigtails and reminded me a lot of Lizzie. The girl ignored me while making her beakless Chica figurine hop across a checkered tablecloth. My friends returned, Orson as Freddy, Jay as Chica the chicken, and Peter as Bonnie the bunny. They waited expectantly, and Pete forgot to breathe for a few seconds until I said, "Follow me." We found Evan by the fire exit, between a cluster of balloons and a smiling poster of Freddy Fazbear. As soon as he saw us, he sucked in a sharp breath, and his legs wobbled. We circled like sharks, and his knees buckled all together. The tears started, as always, and he clasped his hands in front of him like he was praying. "Wow," Pete said. "Your brother is kind of a baby, isn't he?" "It's hilarious," I agreed with more enthusiasm than I felt. I pointed toward the party room and the stage with the animatronics. They were playing Evan's favorite song, one that Mum wrote for him. Why don't we help him get a closer look? He'll love it. Understanding dawned on all four of them at the same time, but Evan responded first. "No, please." "Come on, guys, let's give the little man a lift. He wants to get up close and personal." Evan should have run for it, but he froze in place. P and I hoisted him up, one under each arm. As we hauled him to the stage, he finally thrashed his arms and legs, but he barely grazed us. He tried again. "No, I don't want to go." I clenched his arm, white-knuckled but seeing red. My voice pitched up when I said, "You heard the little man. He wants to get even closer." I felt weird. I sounded weird. I repeated the phrase "little man," which was also weird. I tried to laugh, but that came out as a stilted, "Ha ha ha." No one else noticed, but they were busy laughing too. Evan still squirmed at the base of the stage. The animatronics mouthed in time with the beats of the song, making it look like they were singing. I'd only meant to drag Evan close to these guys, but looking at Fredbear's furry golden head prompted me to say, "Hey guys, I think the little man wants to give Fredbear a big kiss." Orson and Jay grabbed Evan's legs to help raise him up. On 3. 1, 2... He weighed next to nothing when all 4 of us lifted him. We shoved him up next to the bear and slammed their faces together. Their noses collided, and Evan yelped. We held him there for a few more seconds, and we all kept laughing until we felt the pressure change above us. Fredbear kept opening and shutting his mouth, unaware that anything unusual was happening. Evan's head flopped against it, gradually sliding down. Finally, as Fredbear opened his mouth one more time, Evan's head slipped all the way in. The metal maul crashed down, and we all gasped. We froze for too long, then yanked Evan down and staggered back. The other 3 bolted, and I collapsed in place next to my brother's twitching form. I tried to scream for help or move to do anything, but I could only stare between my brother's bleeding head and the animatronic with bloody teeth. I was useless. Other kids panicked and ran and cried around us, and the adults realized something was wrong. The scene was surreal, like I wasn't even there. I heard my mother wailing, saw my father throw himself to the ground to clamp his hands over Evan's wound. He said something to me. I didn't understand him because my ears were starting to buzz. I couldn't hear anything except that one song pumping through the room. I tried again to speak, but my voice choked and died in my throat. Above me, the golden bear with the red mouth kept singing.